Welcome to Side by Side, a podcast where I, Robert Kwong, take you inside conversations with artists, creatives, healers, and warriors taking the charge in their transformational story. Today's guest is Wendy Baird, the owner and creative director of Insight180, a brand consulting and design firm for B2B businesses, nonprofits, and those who sell the invisible. She has been advising companies on positioning strategy, name development, brand identity, design, differentiation, and strategies for growth for more than 25 years. Wendy has written and spoken on topics such as social responsibility, authentic branding, fostering high-performance B2B culture, conscious business practices, finding your voice, human design in business, and more. She is a board member of Conscious Capitalism of Central Maryland. As a Reiki practitioner, singer, and vocal coach in her spare time, she is known to break into song unexpectedly. In this conversation, we explore Wendy's musical upbringing, the art of branding and seeing people's essence, and the delight of being a multi-passionate creative. You can find more side-by-side conversations at sidebysidepodcast.podbean.com. And if you'd like to connect with me about my services, please visit www.robertkwonhome.com. All right, so it's been a while since we've caught up, but I'm always happy to be connecting with Wendy. You and I first met many years ago through personal development, through coaching. We were just amongst some peers and mutuals and things like that. Yeah. And we got to do a wonderful retreat in Costa Rica. And that's when I actually really got to connect with you. So it's been a minute since that time. A lot has happened, but it's so great to
pre a big pandemic.
just a tiny little thing. It's so nice to be seeing you again, and also thank you for making the time to connect with me today.
Thank you for reaching out. I'm so excited. It's lovely to see you.
And I'm so excited to dive in with another person who identifies as multi-passionate, multi-talented individual, because that's very much who I am as well. So
I know there's so many things you do and are good at. It's always nice to talk to you, because I think every time we talk to each other, it's like, oh, that's right, you do that, or oh yeah, you're from there, or there's so many things.
That's very much kind of my personality in some ways, just has so many interests. But one thing we do have in common is a love for music. So maybe we can start there. Actually, I don't know necessarily where you grew up.
I grew up in a tiny town in Northeast Pennsylvania, and very kind of conservative area. And I kept moving further south, but I'm not too far, but I live in Maryland now. But I mean, for as long as I can remember, I loved music. It was a part of my life. Not only, my mom was a beautiful singer, but she was a preacher's kid. So she used to sing in church a lot. But my father, he's 94, and he is a world-class trumpet player. And he played in the U.S. Navy band for a few years and was the soloist, the youngest one they ever had, kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And then ended up playing a lot of New Orleans jazz style. But he can play anything. He can improvise to anything. So I kind of grew up with that vibe, and in terms of singing, just picked up a lot of things very quickly and loved performing too.
Yeah, I remember your dad you were talking about being sort of a local known musician and a talent and things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's played on, some famous, not so much the records, but backed them up in concerts and that kind of thing. Played with some of the Dorsey bands back in the day, that kind of thing. But he's amazing. He's amazing. A real pro.
Were you able to, so you did have a chance to see your parents perform and do all of that?
Oh yeah. Well, my dad especially. So my mom did not really like to perform, but she loves to sing still to this day. But we used to sing together sometimes. He would invite me to some of his concerts. So I'd sit in for a set. He always told me, Wendy, know a dozen tunes and know your key, and any good band will be able to back you up in terms of like the American Songbook and jazz and, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Chris Connor, that kind of thing. And loved it. And that's what I did. And to this day, it's like, I know my keys of at least 12 songs. So you can get up there anytime just in case. But I think I really learned improvisation from him, just
Yeah.
playing with melodies. I can harmonize to anything. It's just, I always thought everybody could, but apparently it's not necessarily a thing.
That's the person with perfect pitch. Like, can everyone do that? And you're like, no,
Yeah,
actually.
no, not always. And actually, it's funny too because some of this multi-passionate stuff, I now do some vocal coaching, especially for
Yeah.
younger, like young girls who want to audition for the school play. But some adults or even later in life who are like, I've always wanted to sing. Will you help me? And I love coaching them. So,
I love adult music students because it means so much more for someone to commit at that time in their life
right,
than it was when you were a kid, kind of like not, probably pushed by parents sometimes, right? Really
right,
doing something that you're kind of just trying to figure out. But as an adult,
right.
committing to music in that way is so much deeper to me. I remember at my old piano studio, I loved watching the adult students, not because I love seeing like, struggle or like maybe technique is not as advanced, but there was something that takes so much more courage to go
Well,
up
like
there and
when
still perform.
or when you see that they got it, or when they didn't think that they couldn't, it's like, oh yeah, you totally can. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really fun. I think that even just teaching kind of confidence and presence. I mean, I think I do more of that in the coaching really than a lot of the vocalese type of thing, the exercises. I mean, yes, we do that, but a lot of it is just about the confidence and trying something new and pushing them a little bit. It's really fun.
So did your parents like the fact that you were into singing and into the same things that,
Oh
they
yeah.
were brought up with?
Oh, I mean, they encouraged it. They nurtured it.
Okay.
I took piano as a kid, and I was okay at it, but my ear, I have a very good ear apparently. So I would just always fake it. I wouldn't try to read the notes. I would just
Hmm.
like, I'd hear it and then I would be like, oh, that's not right. Let's try this. And
Yeah.
so I didn't stay with that as much, but they also allowed me to do singing lessons, and that I just embraced. And I had a voice
Mm.
scholarship in college for 3 years, but I didn't major in music. So I made, yeah, this is part of that multi-passionate thing. I loved art
Yeah.
and music, and at least back in my day when we were in school, you had to kind of choose, are you going to
Right.
focus on art classes or music? I chose music, and did all the competitions in high school for, regional choir, state choir, that kind of thing, and did very well. And then had the scholarship in college, but I also loved art, and I kind of resented the fact that I had to choose one or the other. So in
Right.
college, even though I was a communications major with a speech minor and a concentration in PR, public relations, I took every art class. I took pottery. I leaned toward the graphic design courses in the communications track, was a speech and theater minor. So, I just did a lot of things. Loved
I
it.
thought that's what education is for, for you to get to like experiment before you like actually
Yeah.
figure out the thing that you're most suited for and whatnot. But
Right.
now there's just so much pressure that it's almost like you're not supposed
Yeah.
to do that. When are you
Right.
supposed to explore?
Right. Yeah, I agree. So it's funny because I feel like, I'm remembering now. I mean, I've been able to do a lot of music throughout my life, even though I've owned a brand consulting and design company for 24 years. I find time for music. Like I just make time for music, and I'll do
Hmm.
I'll do a local theater production here and there. Anytime I get a jazz gig, I'll sit in with some people, or sing at weddings and funerals or wherever. It's like any chance I get to sing, I do because I love it so much.
Well,
Yeah.
what made you decide to study communications and PR and speech?
It's so funny because I'm not sure what it was. I must have, I don't know, maybe I saw like some TV show person that there's something about PR, like public relations.
Right.
That just sounded
Right.
great.
Right. Right.
It sounded like that could be where you use a lot of different skills and you're a communicator. It's funny because I like writing and I love to write for my clients, but then I'm done. Like I don't have any I don't really want to write a book, although people have told me you should write a book about this. But there's just something about that. Maybe it was that title, but the further I got into it, the more I realized I'm really a problem solver. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm a really good listener, and in terms of shifting it into this branding piece, that's a real fit for me because it's kind of like you're really getting to know a person or company or product like very closely and bringing up the best things about it. And I find that when I'm in a branding situation with a client, I watch them to see what lights them up, and I'm like, that's the thing that we need to be talking about. That's the thing that we need to be able to share. And how can you bring more of that into your business? And it's really interesting because it's kind of like the cobbler's shoes. It's really hard to write for yourself, or even though they may know their craft very well, it really usually takes someone else to kind of bring it out. And for some
Yeah.
reason I'm good at that. It's I'm able to see that. I'm able to ask the right questions, and even get people to kind of aspire more, think more about where they want to be. And it's amazing at how they kind of grow into it. It's really neat.
Mm. Well, you have this line in your marketing and branding business about selling the invisible. And I love that turn of phrase. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious about what you mean about selling the invisible as something that drives you and that you care
Yeah.
about.
Well, so part of it is I work mostly with business to business clients. So a lot of times they're selling things that are not tangible. It's not a product. So it could be a coach, it could be a consultant, it could be someone who
Mm-hmm.
does training, it could be any of that. But after we kind of coined that phrase, or made that part of our own brand, I realized that it's also finding that quality in our clients that they can't even describe. It's more of the essence. It's more of that unspeakable, unknowable, that thing that just makes them special. And so it really fits because it's really part of the client and part of like what they do, their services.
So, for someone who's, let's say, never worked with someone for branding or marketing, PR, things like that, what do you encounter as far as like common misconceptions for someone who sort of like never really tried to work with someone from that industry?
I think it's more of people struggle knowing, not knowing themselves, but the best way to convey something. There's almost a sense of relief, like, how did you know that? Like, there's just, and honestly, of course I'm working hard, but I don't feel like I'm doing the work. I'm asking the right questions, and I'm watching and listening for those things that I know rise to the top. And a lot of people just can't see that. They can't see what their brilliance is. It's like getting to that essence. We have a way of doing that and then being able to convey that. So what I've heard a lot of people say is, oh my gosh, I struggled with this for years. I should have done this way sooner, because it's hard to know, to do all of that work yourself. You're great at what you do, but you're not always great at telling the story around it.
No, that's very much true. And in fact, for so many artists, I think being thoughtful about branding and PR, as much as there's kind of a stereotype, like that's a little bit vain, I guess, but like
Yeah.
that can really impact someone's career and the way that someone can make art in their life. So, like, in many ways, I see you having that overlap as being like
Yeah.
really valuable because a lot of people could use it, your talent.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can. And, I'm also very clear in all these years that I've done this, that it also needs to be the right fit. Like, I may not be everybody's cup of tea. And I also want to make sure that I align with the person's kind of business values and goals. And then it works great. It's
Yeah.
really important. But
Well,
we dive into that too. Like we help people really figure out what's important to them, and help it to rise to the top.
and from multi-passionate to multi-passionate between us, I want to read something about you, which is that you are a brander, designer, writer, singer, actor, Reiki healer, creative, human design lover, and maker of soup, which might be my favorite line that you have in there.
If I
Would you
write a
say,
book,
I mean,
that's the book I'm going to write.
I know, I remember you talking about that, but anyway, yeah, which one
Yeah.
comes most naturally to you? Would you say the singing artist side or?
I think probably yes, that the singer artist side, but it's funny. I became a Reiki master. Gosh, it's been about 12 years now. That was as a result of taking care of someone who I cared for very much, who passed
Mm-hmm,
away. And I was there during his end of life, along with some other friends who were like taking care of him. And it was just such a beautiful and life-changing experience. It changed me deeply. What's interesting is I think that part of me was always there, this healer. I remember, Robert, when, oh gosh, 20 years ago or so, my staff had gifted me a massage when I was at a conference in Chicago. And the person who was giving me a massage said, "Oh, you're a healer too." And I said, "Huh? What? What do you mean?" Like, so this person who had this very intuitive sense. And, I never thought anything of it. And then a few years later, I was like, oh, I'm like, there's some intuitive things that were happening. And there was definitely a gift in helping to take care of my friend toward the end of his life. And I gifted myself after that a session with a holistic coach who also was a Reiki healer, Reiki master. Got on her table and experienced Reiki and just was blown away. And I was like, okay, I need to learn how to do that. Can I learn from
mm-hmm,
you? And I did. It still amazes me. So it's funny because in branding and design, it feels a little bit more like, okay, you're in business, it's a go-getter, you got to make things happen. And it's funny, actually, I've completely shifted that now, and my branding and marketing for myself is way more like my Reiki healing. I don't market it, I don't do anything, and people either say, "Hey, I heard you are a healer," or "I heard you did this," and
mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
it comes up in a conversation. And it's really all about receiving, and it's really all about getting out of the way. It's really all about just letting this energy guide you. I can't explain what happens, but it's magical and things happen.
Well, you've done Reiki healing on me. This was many years ago
That's right.
now, and I remember that. I so appreciate that, by the way. I still think about that. So thank you. I appreciate anyone offering that just out of generosity, but at the same time, this can be really helpful if you want to work with
Yeah.
someone more long term to actually have the healing experiences compound and build on each other, right?
And it's so funny. And since then, I've taken classes on intuition and all kinds of things. So, and that's more about confirmation of, oh, so not everybody feels that when like it's
Yeah.
kind of just
Yeah.
like with the music. Not everybody can harmonize and sing with other people and hold their own. No, I do think everybody is intuitive to a certain extent. However, it's like allowing and receiving, and not taking all of it so seriously. Like, just there's surprises and delight that comes in, and or if a feeling or a vision comes in while I'm giving Reiki, I talk about it with the client now. Sometimes I sing in the room because, oh, I think we were talking about this, how vibration is so
Yeah.
important. Like, so much is vibrational, and so the tone of my voice, making it go low or high, changes the vibration of energy in the room. And so it's like, hey, it's just another tool, right? So that's one of the ways that things kind of overlap a little, but there's all kinds of things that have happened in the Reiki room, and I just go with it. Good things. And, I'll use sometimes different card decks and allow people to choose. It never ceases to amaze me that they are always spot on and exactly what the person needed to hear. If I get a message, I'll say, I don't know why I was thinking of, a dolphin, and like it'll mean something to the person. So I don't say those things now, where I used to like not say, and I'm like, well, maybe they need to hear this. And sometimes
Mm.
it's being connected to a past loved one. Sometimes it's just, oh my gosh, I had a dream about that, and this is what that means to me. I just encourage people to share those things when that's intuition, that's higher self, that's guides coming through.
Absolutely. And I think we're not the only ones who are exploring so many different aspects of ourselves, right? Especially over the
Yeah,
past few years, I feel like there's been more of a willingness to go outside your comfort zone and just explore the different facets of yourself. And so,
right.
for people who are really in that, like you and I, how would you recommend that we think about the way we present ourselves? It makes sense that sharing a Reiki event versus public speaking versus a concert are going to be different, and
So
I'm
different.
somebody where I do so many different things, right? So,
Right.
like, how do you tend to approach someone like that?
It's so funny because just today I had a meeting with someone. So this is someone I've known professionally who was in a leadership group with me years ago. And we had a meeting because she is looking into kind of reinventing herself as she leaves kind of one career and is not necessarily retiring, but going to a kind of another chapter. And she heard from someone else that I had kind of coached someone through that. So it was more like a personal branding, like what do we do? So she actually wants to find out more about who she is and what she can excel at. So those same branding questions work. What's interesting, so this is where I'm going to bring human design in. Whenever I can, I try to get the human design chart of clients that I'm working with, even those that are like completely business. Like if there's an opening, I will try to know their human design. So this person who I was with this morning was like, what is that? And I said, well, and I just come out and say, it's a little woo woo. And some people don't necessarily believe in it, but I do. And I said, me knowing what your energetic blueprint is really helpful to guide you. So, and it's funny because as I'm a projector in human design, and as a projector, we are guides. That's what we're called. We have a penetrating aura that sees into a person, and we have to be careful with that because sometimes, well, not sometimes, always, we need to be invited into the conversation. But I can't tell you how much easier my life is now knowing that about my own energy blueprint, because I will never force anything on anyone. Not that I forced things before, but I'm not going to go out and initiate something like you can as a manifester, um,
That's right. Yeah.
because I wait for recognition, because it can be intrusive for my energy to come, in contact with someone else's share something, even though it could be really helpful. But if it's not invited, no way. I've learned that, and my life is so much easier because of that. So imagine how much more I can help someone knowing that, you know, I can help to brand them when I know that they are, say, a generator who's here to respond, and a manifesting generator who might be multi-passionate, but also knowing where they're open in their energy, and just even small things about them are so useful. So it's great to help them if they want to, but even just helping me understand them more. So love human
Mm.
design. I've been studying it now, probably since around the time that we were in Costa Rica. I think that was right when I was beginning that. So I'm still new in my experiment, but there's a thing called profile line 5-1, and the one is called the investigator. And boy, do I deep dive. When I decide I want to find out about something, I learn everything I can. So I've been studying pretty much nonstop with some great teachers to learn more and more about it because I just find it fascinating.
I'm not a human design expert, but I have met several people who use that as a tool to apply to their
Yeah,
practice, right? And it is a great way, especially when we're talking about how do we look at ourselves? How do we present ourselves when we're such
absolutely.
complicated people? This is just one way to ground it into something that's actually real about you, but
Yeah.
it kind of encompasses different ways that you can express that about you, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well,
So,
and what I love about this meeting this morning is I said, I would love to know your human design. And that's one way that we start. And then, we'll go through a series of exercises and questions to help her figure out these next steps and the things that she wants to do. And it's just kind of this thing that started to happen. So this is a new part of some of the things that I'm doing. I guess you'd call it branding, but it's probably more kind of coaching and consulting, but it definitely has a brand twist to it. So
Well, I'd love to, maybe we can dive in a little bit about some of the things that you're talking about, because for some listeners, maybe they have no idea what human design is.
yeah,
So in there are different like types of the way that people's systems work and are sort of like weaknesses and strengths and things like that. And I'm a manifester and you are a projector. Is that correct?
right. And then there's some people would say there's 5 types altogether, but there's really 4. So there's generators and a subtype called manifesting generator, which
Right.
simply means that there's a motor to the throat, but that they have sacral energy. So what does all that mean? And then there's reflector, who is completely open, who does not. So there's 9 centers of energy in of human, and these some centers are open, or some centers are defined, and where we're defined is where we have consistent energy. Projectors and manifestors and reflectors have no sacral energy, life force energy, so we're going to operate a little bit differently. We're going to have different gifts, and everybody's different. So what I love about human design, and I'll tell you, this is one way it's really affected my branding as well and my business, everyone is so completely unique. And, there's, I'll say coaches, but there's businesses, marketers, all kind of folks who will come in and say, well, you should do this and this and this, and, do this funnel and do things this way. And it's like, you know what? That is not going to work for everybody. Or, when you're changing habits, hustle, hustle. That is not going to work for a manifestor or a projector. Now, 65% of the population are generators. So we, Robert, you and I were probably raised we were raised in a generator world. We're expected to kind of fall in line and do the same thing, but it's like, oh yeah, I don't have the energy to always do the things that a generator might say. So just having that information is huge. The other one that I love to point out is, you're an emotional manifestor, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah. And so I'm non-emotional. And what that means is when the solar plexus, the emotional solar plexus, is defined or not. I learned huge lessons from this, because anytime you have an open energy center, the one with the openness is actually feeling the energy of another and sometimes amplifying it. So imagine that there's someone like you who's on an emotional wave and might be feeling at the height of that. I might take that on and make it bigger. so,
Oh,
um,
right, right, right,
so
right.
I learned that in my relationship with my son. He would be emotional about something, or sharing something, or angry or sad or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I would let this truly affect me and make it bigger, amplify, escalate. And it's like, now I know, just knowing that piece of it is so freeing, because I can say, oh, I am feeling this intensity. I can say, is that mine or is that someone else's? So
Right,
it's
right,
really,
right.
really a beautiful thing. It's just, it's impersonal. It's just the way the chart is. It's just the way our energy is. So it's not like I have to blame something on someone or compare or anything. It's just like, oh, energetically, that's just what's happening here. So it's really kind of freeing.
Yeah, and I love working from that place and then looking at, okay, so what are you interested in as a manifester? And I will say this, not being an expert in even my own chart, but having looked at it somewhat, I do appreciate the way that human design made me think about my relationship to my anger. I used to have a
Yeah.
very like anger bad, don't look at it, don't talk about it, don't
Right.
acknowledge it. And it's only within, the past few years that I see like, oh, if I'm feeling angry about something, I better check it out, I better honor it,
It's
acknowledge
a
it,
sign.
and act.
Yeah.
It's a sign for something that is important for me.
And something may be out of whack, and maybe I need to step away for a moment and figure out what's happening here. Yeah, because that's your not self theme, is
Mhm.
anger. And when things are, and so that's the thing. I mean, I think I would describe you as one of the most peaceful people that I know. That's the
Isn't that
signature of
ironic?
a
Yeah.
manifester, is peace.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing,
Well, I learned that actually I need to tune into my anger in order to support my
right?
peace, basically.
And
Otherwise,
it's not like your anger is lashing out at someone. From what I understand about the manifestor energy, when you're in your zone, it can make you feel somewhat angry to have that flow interrupted. Like it's a real thing. So
mm,
if in the flow, and that's interrupted, or you're not getting the information you need, or you're not informing someone what needs to happen. Yeah. Okay, that struck a
I'm
chord.
already being like, wow, yeah, that would test my patience. I remember that. No. But
Exactly.
but I think before I had a lot more, I couldn't utilize it. I couldn't
Right.
actually have that be
Yeah.
something that's helpful and actually protecting myself.
Right.
In any case, something looking like this can make you sort of just expand what's the way you look at everything that you are,
Yeah.
right? And to see that as
Absolutely.
like there's nothing wrong with you. Everybody's just a little bit built different, you know?
Absolutely. Some people bring ideas into the room. So I have my head and ajna defined. So very mental projector, I'm called. It used to just drive me nuts. I'd walk into a room. I would share even an idea I had. No one would recognize it. And then someone would say the exact same idea. And I'd be like, what just happened? That's part of that energy. It's fun. It's informative, and just such a useful tool.
There's this other thing that you're affiliated with that I'm really curious about.
Okay.
You talk about conscious capitalism, and that's
Oh
something that
yeah.
I think, like, everybody has been talking about and discussing about the world over the past few
Yeah.
years. And I'm really fascinated to ask someone where you've put your feet in so many different areas and fields and stuff. So you've really seen a
Yeah.
lot too. What does
Yeah.
conscious capitalism mean to you?
I actually am on the board for the Conscious Capitalism of Central Maryland. And so it's
That's right.
it's mostly businesses. The short answer is people over profit and planet. It's not necessarily okay, we're going to be meditating. It's not like that. It's really about elevating humanity. Like, let's make sure that in all of the transactions, no matter what, like, there's this concept of being above the line. Like, any
Right.
time I'm in a conversation, can I just regroup and think of myself as bringing my best self or my best energy and being above the line? Like, if someone is confrontational or whatever else, I'm not going to take abuse, but I mean, like, let's understand that there might be something else going on. And what can I bring that can help to, potentially neutralize that? Like, we're purpose driven to promote not just the power of capitalism, but to create positive change, to do good, and to elevate humanity. So we try to inspire and equip individuals to embrace conscious business principles. And
Right.
those,
Right.
it's about stakeholder orientation. It's about creating a conscious culture. It's about leadership skills and values, and then having a purpose, being purpose driven. So those are, and I feel just very aligned with that. And it's interesting because I think there's a lot more people who are really doing those things, and they wouldn't necessarily call themselves conscious capitalists, but for someone who's in business, it feels really nice and really aligned to be with like-minded people and just be able to talk about those kinds of concepts. Yeah, there's so much going on right now. So it's nice to be among some like-minded folks who, yeah, they care about their business, but they care about people and all the people, all the stakeholders. It's not just this kind of top-down leadership. I really enjoy it.
I love anything that is a mission that's about long-term sustainability, not just short-term
Yeah,
gain, because we do that
exactly.
so much that it comes back to bite us in the butt sometimes, right? As it has in the
It
past. So,
does.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
indeed. Yes, indeed, it does. So I think it's in the last few years, especially, I feel so aligned with my clients. And I think a lot of it is because of some of those conscious business practices that I put into place. But, and it's also just allowing other ways, not necessarily doing everything like, all the structures have said to do up to this time. There's so many things right now that are breaking down, and I think it's time for a lot of these organizations and structures to be really looked at. So I'm not sure exactly what will happen with all of those, but things need to shift and change.
And speaking of shifting and positive change and all of that, it's not uncommon that people have to decide, like, where to next. I've been doing this for a certain number of years. previously, before coaching, I worked at New York City Ballet for 4 years,
Yeah,
and it can be really difficult to navigate transitions and pivots, which involve basically a revision and rebranding and
absolutely.
all of that. This might be a general question, but when do you think people should start thinking about like, it's time to make some change rather than wait too late and for change to be forced upon you,
Right.
right?
Like, don't be burnt out or don't be like so miserable in a place, that you're going to,
Well, because people change only when things are like you have no choice but to change. You have to be
right.
pushed to it, but it doesn't always have to be that way.
No, and I mean, sometimes it is that way, unfortunately. But you know what? I think that's one of the gifts of the pandemic. People were forced to look at things a little bit differently. I think that there have been a lot of good things that have come out of it. I think that I run my business completely differently from, pre and post. I might have started running it a little bit differently after the the floods in Ellicott City. So my office was flooded twice, and
Yeah.
we learned a lot from that. Like we had amazing business community neighbors that came out and helped us. That shifted a lot in how my team and I worked. But then with the pandemic, I feel like that prepared us a little bit for that. Like we were almost ready to be working virtually. It really reminded me of everybody needs time and space during the day to check in. Just because I work one way doesn't mean that my art director works that way or my content creator works that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, not just, hi, how are you today? Like, how's everybody? What's going on with this? What's going on? Like a real ability to check
Mm.
in with people and to encourage, at 20 years ago, you never would have heard me. I would never say, hey, why don't you go take a walk? Sounds like you might need to burn off some excess energy, or, can you get out in the sun today? Like, those are now common, typical things. Can you get out in the sun a little bit today? Like, maybe that would be great. Or can you work on your deck? Or, can you come back to
Yeah.
that I'm encouraging my team to take time off. And when I was starting out in business, so I was a single mom for years. My son was 8 when his father and I divorced, and I just was so lucky to have some great neighbors and friends who, helped with childcare or picking up after school or whatever. I'm like, why on earth would I not encourage my team to get their kids to the bus and to pick them up from the bus stop and get that amazing, mom, look what I did today. Why would I want them to miss that? To me, having the time and space to do what they need to do in their personal lives, even if they are going to work a little bit later or shift how they do their work day. I think you have to have some limits and some guidelines maybe, and then
Yeah.
do what you want. So,
Yeah, I hear a lot of that is like how we've all navigated drastic change over the past few years. It tends to work better if people can really talk to each other. And we
absolutely.
we rarely do that, to be
We
honest.
rarely do. And I do think that the lines between business, especially when you've been working with people for so long, I mean, sometimes those lines are blurry. And like, I am all about personal boundaries, but there's also like, hey, can we just be real about what's going on? And like, when someone might be really affected by one thing or another, we started doing it more realistically during the pandemic and during
Mm,
Black Lives Matters and during, so many
yeah.
different things. And I think that we have to. It's like it's not worth being in business if you can't be close to your team, close to your clients. I mean, it's not always just about business. It's about life.
Yeah, you can't be in business alone, right? I
No.
mean, what is,
Mm-mm.
yeah.
No. And so it's funny. So you asked me before about maker of soup. So that whole thing was
Yes.
very, I don't know, I guess maybe I probably learned it from my mom. My mom used to take meals to someone, or, they would have coffee klatches in the old neighborhood. They called them coffee klatches. She used to be a nurse for a little while, and she was just a caretaker. That was not something I necessarily aspired to, but when some friends were going through some hard times, like my friend Greg, who I helped take care of, it was like, well, yeah, I'm going to go take soup, or I'm going to do this or that. I even ended up taking soup to some clients. Like, I had one client whose child was suffering from a disease or brain cancer. And so I was like, they were just in treatment all the time. And he happened to be not far from where I lived, and I was like, "Can I bring you soup?" Like it was like the only thing that came out, and it turned out that there were certain things for the diet, like it can't have any root vegetables or can't have this or that or no dairy or whatever. And I was like, "Yep, no problem." So I started I started making these amazing soups, and they were so good. And so now it's kind of like that's my thing. I'll take soup to someone if I know someone is sick or fighting something, or and oftentimes in I would take soup and do Reiki. So it would be there's definitely stories with the different kinds of soup. So I'm like, yep, I'm going to write that book where this recipe and tell the story of, what was happening that time in with healing. So maybe, who knows? I might have to take your
I
class,
love
Robert.
that. I love how you're like, I don't write novels, but I don't know, Wendy. Sounds like
I
a novel
know.
to me.
Maybe. So, I mean, so maybe that's how full life integration works, all these
No,
things coming
truly.
together.
I love that. I mean, it's very like eat, pray, love. And also, like, soups is just the most medicinal form
Yeah.
of food. If you've ever take care of someone like after surgery or when they've been really sick,
Yeah.
the thing that's most helpful to them as far as like food would probably be broth or soup. It's a
Yeah.
thing, and it matches what you bring into your spaces and relationships, I think. So it's
Yeah.
lovely.
Well, it's just another way to nurture. And I know that from my at the bottom of my heart and soul, I'm a nurturer at heart. And no matter how much I try, I can't not suppress that mom energy. There's just something about it.
I love that for you. And I love that for the people in your life. It's great to have someone who embodies that. I mean, this is the thing about multi passionate people. There's like that. And then you're like in the field of marketing and branding and PR for 20 plus years. Is there anything else you want to say to that or about the time we're in relative to what people are navigating with this stuff that you work on?
You know what I want to say is give yourself permission to be all of you, and give yourself permission to recognize the brilliance in you. There is so much brilliance in each individual person. No one else should suppress that in you. There really is just so much. And when I'm working with someone, allow me to see the real you, because that's the part that is going to sell the invisible. I mean, I hate the word selling, but I really had to have kind of a come to Jesus moment with my profession. I didn't like being the
Mm,
marketer that constantly intrudes on someone's space, pushing out and advertising and all of that. And it's just like, and with social media. And I'm like, the only way I can reconcile being in the business that I'm being in is when I can really get to know someone who's making a great impact or a positive influence in the world and share that with everybody else. Now that I can get behind.
right.
Yeah, that's
That's powerful.
yeah, and those are the voices that I want to help amplify. So ever since then, that's been like a shift in my business, because it's like, no, I'm not selling, but that's why it's really important for me to be aligned to with the clients that I work with.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
artists and creatives can be have a tricky relationship with sales, anything related to
Oh,
sales. It takes
absolutely.
them a lot of getting used to, I think, in some ways. So I don't see that as a negative thing at all. Although I think
Yeah.
before earlier, maybe I did. This
Yeah.
also just helps if you can empower yourself through business or through giving yourself more resources and
Right.
stakeholders. I mean, it just gives you more of an opportunity to show all of yourself. And we don't have forever to do that. No one's going to
No,
care
we
that you
don't.
suppress this part of you at the end of your life.
Right.
Who is that for, right?
Exactly.
Anyway. Oh, this is so fun. And I really appreciate you chatting with me about all these different topics. I know we were like,
I
oh, is
know.
this
I'm
going to
like, oh my
work?
gosh, there's so many more things that we can talk about. Like, I'm like, we didn't even talk about gardening or travel or anything else. It's
I
like
know. I wanted to ask you about travel too, but maybe that might be another
next
conversation. But I
next time.
certainly won't be the last
Yeah.
time we connect at all. But I'm also just really appreciative we held space for this topic that I do think a lot of people
Yeah.
have to think about. And then on top of that, the work you do with your healing energy, like Reiki human design. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that about you.
Thank you for allowing me to come here and just having this space. Like, I know a conversation with Robert is always a good one.
I hope so. I mean, I enjoy it because you get to like talk about things that you don't normally have space for unless you're like, hey, we have this hour.
I don't talk about all these things with all my clients. I mean, I probably would if they ask me about it. I'm right there.
Yeah,
But
there's always a lot to multi-passion.
I'm waiting for that invitation
Right.
for sure. But
Yeah.
I love it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Robert. Good to see you.